Hi, everybody. Gloria Jean here from Women in Pool.
And
JoAnn
JoAnn,
Mason Parker, yes, needs no introduction. But in the background, we have none other than Mary Kenniston. Oh my God, is that just an amazing treat? I know, right? First and
thank you.
foremost, thank you, Mary, for joining us. We truly appreciate it. And we'd like to congratulate Mary for her induction into the WPBA Hall of Fame and well deserved, well earned on that.
Thank, thank you so
Yes.
much. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Tonight we have a somewhat controversial topic, excuse me. Um, you guys know me, I'm always off the cuff. I don't like to read from a script. Um, and This is about a very long, forever debated discussion of who's better, men or women, in pool. And there were some really snide, snarky comments. I'm just going to be really honest here. Um, and aside from that, we had some men come forward and give some really great descriptions of why women are better, their thoughts on that, as well as why they see that men may be better, but for different reasons. And there was data and statistics to support some of what these men were saying. So I really want to get into this. I'm going to go back in right here to Women in Pool. Please, everybody, the best thing you could do for us is share this, get the word out, get Women in Pool out there, because I don't plan on stopping this at any point. I also want to say, now that we have a few viewers in here, that we're accepting sponsors. Any and all sponsors that the panel agrees upon can come in. So we can have In the Zone, Off the Rail, Jam Up. We can have Andy Cloth, Simonis, uh, any cloth company, any ball set, Dynasphere, Aramith, uh, Arcos, um, uh, and
Navigator
where
Tips Rock.
navigate. We could have Navigator. We could have Kamui. We could have Teom. That's exactly right. Q's any Q sponsor. And What I'm looking to do is grow this off the wall. Thank you very much, Andy. Much appreciated. I just wanted to put that out there. If anybody wants to sponsor us, we proved that we could go somewhere and do something without sponsors, completely zero sponsor free. Did we not, JoAnn?
Yep,
In only 5 episodes, we grew off the wall. Um,
yep.
this is our 5th episode, and here we go, everybody. So, thank you for viewing in. Hi, Carly. How are you? Hi, Chris. Thank you again. There he is, Ranger Gregory. At some point, I want to speak with Ranger about this. He had some really extremely wise words. So, let's start with the fact that this is a male dominated industry, no doubt. The end. Um, I am going to now be quiet. And JoAnn and Mary, whoever wants to go first, please pick up on what you think about who is better, why you feel that one might be better. Does it have to do with anatomy and physiology? Does it have to do with the nurturing, a woman versus a man, when it comes to their supposed roles in, the happy housewife and, the brawny guy outside? Um, we just really want to keep it real tonight, and I expect no one to hold any punches. So free for
So,
all.
so I'll just start just a little bit here because I want Mary to really speak on this. I just want to first say that I would like to actually view it more, can the sexes play equally? And can the sexes, the male and the females, play on an equal level? Not necessarily one being greater than the other, perhaps, but can they play on the same footing, and can they play on the same stage? And I think we're starting to see that more and more now. And I'm really curious, and this is why I had suggested Mary to come on. I'm very curious what Mary thinks about this whole thing, because you grew into the sport, Mary, when Jean Belucas was playing, and she was the first one who played with the men. So what do you think? I throw the ball to you.
Well, first of all, I do not think that the women are playing on the same level as the men. Now I'm talking about top men, top women.
Okay.
Not yet.
Mm-hmm.
When I first started many, many years ago, I'm talking about probably like 74, 75. As JoAnn just mentioned, Jean Belucas was the dominant female player. And she wasn't really very good. And I don't mean this disparagingly, but as compared to the men, she was just the best of the women. And as time went on, she got to the point where she was competing in the men's 9-ball tournaments in the late 80s. And she also competed with the men in straight pool and beat some of them, but I wouldn't consider her one of the top players overall, because she didn't play well enough to beat the best in the game at that time. The Siegels and the Buddy Halls and the Nick Varners and so on and so forth. I remember when I first started playing, there was a lot of resistance to women in pool rooms.
Mm-hmm.
I was flat out told by many of them that I didn't belong in the pool room. What are you doing here? And blah, 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 blah. But on the other hand, I did get a lot of support.
Right, mixed bag, right?
Yeah. So I basically went to the places where I was welcome, and the hell with the other places,
Sure.
And anyway, but, and I also went around. I had a pretty good job at that time. And I was the first woman to sell Yellow Pages in the state of New Jersey. And that's another story. But I was making real good money. And I went around with $100 bills in my hand, just begging the top players in the area, Mizrak and Hopkins, and Ray Martin and Margot and all of them. And, all of them had a story and this and that. And one of them told me that he didn't want to waste his time because women would never be able to play as good as men.
Well,
anyway, yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I want to just chime in because of what you're saying about those players from that generation. I was coached, as Mary knows, and Mary, you know my dad very well.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I was coached by my dad, who is a very good player, straight through the years. And I remember growing up as a small kid, 12, 13 years old. And I remember my dad back then saying things to me such as, well, you don't play like a woman. You don't play like a girl, rather. You play more
Right,
like
you play like a man. That's what I used to get to.
You're playing right, because, and that was, when you think
Compliment.
back, it was a compliment for
That's
sure.
right.
But now I'm going to tell you something, Mary. Now my father, at 77 years old, if my dad was on the show right now, my father believes that there's no reason why the women cannot play as well, because the game has changed on a certain level as far as the cloth is faster, the rails are faster. So you don't have the same strength factor involved. So that if you, let's say back in those days, Mary, you had to have
a stroke.
Very powerful stroke to draw the length of the table. And only a few of us women could do that.
That's right.
But we were also using more of our own strength to make that happen. So just naturally alone, just that people don't understand back then, at least, that strength was a factor. And if I had to use, let's say 85% of my strength to accomplish something, and a guy only needs to use 40%, of course he's going to be more accurate, because he doesn't have to try as hard. He doesn't have to use all of his energy the same way. But we don't have that today. And that's why I think that they're the top the tippy top, the cream of the women are getting closer to the men. Not necessarily the cream of the men, but that next level down. And I think we're seeing a closing of that gap.
So you're saying that strength overall plays a factor in male versus female when it comes to pool.
Not any longer.
Right, not anymore. Not
In
anymore.
the old days, we played on very slow cloth. And like JoAnn said, you had to have a stroke to move the ball around the table. And in addition to just, the strength, you had to use English, spin. You had to know how to use English because the spin would propel the ball. You could get more mileage with the cue ball if you use spin rather than rolling the ball.
Right, just center.
Stun or spin. And anyway, it wasn't until, we'll get back to Jean Belucas, it wasn't until Pat Fleming started working with Jean Belucas on her 9-ball game that her game skyrocketed. And she had a fabulous break.
Yes, she did.
And, a lot of the guys wish they would have had her break.
Yeah, and she was tall like you, but her technique was also very, very good.
Yes.
So she had both things going on.
Yes. The main difference that I think between the women and the men, now I'm basing my knowledge on the old days. The numbers, your male friend was correct, Gloria Jean, in that the numbers of women that played versus the number of men that played, the difference was huge.
Yes.
It probably still is, even though it's
severely lopsided.
Oh yeah,
severely
very
lopsided.
lopsided. And also, most of the men, they dropped out of school. They started playing when they were very, very young, and hanging around the pool rooms and gambling. And I know people don't want to talk about gambling, but when you tournaments are fine, to play your match or whatever, but I believe that playing for money really hones your competitive edge and your skill set and your desire to win and all the things that make a champion. Now,
I wanted on that one.
Go ahead.
I need to chime in on that because now that I am playing again, I have had this discussion actually with my mom, who said just something similar to me. And I feel as if the way I practice now and how I go about my practice and playing against people, not for money necessarily, I don't gamble, but I take my practice extremely serious. And I don't think that me playing necessarily for $50 or $100 really means anything in terms of honing any skills, more so than just working super hard at my game and playing for hours on end and competitively and in the public eye. Because I'm going to tell you something, you don't think going to a tournament when you're backing yourself. When I went to Walker, Minnesota just now, guess what? I was 2,000 in arrears before I made one shot. So
yes,
that's,
I agree with what you're saying to a certain extent, but the thing is that you're playing a short race. When you're playing for money, and I'm not talking about playing for $50 or whatever. I'm talking about playing for thousands. That'll make you bear down.
It'll make you. You're out there. And you don't have a third barrel, and you can't.
That's right. As long as your money holds out, you can keep playing to catch your gear. I was always a better action player than I was a tournament player because I was a slow starter.
My dad too.
Yeah, and I don't know how many times, a race to 7 or a race to 9. I mean, I'd be down like 3 or 4 to nothing. And, before I finally could, start to catch a little bit of a gear, and people used to say that, oh, Mary's such a good come from behind player. Yeah, well, if we would have started on an equal footing, it might have been 9-1, my favor,
Mhm.
but I was just a slow starter. And I lost to many players that I shouldn't have lost to based on our skill ability,
Mhm.
because I was a slow starter. But back to the difference between, and now, like I say,
But
I'm basing.
can I just chime in here for a quick second too?
Sure.
I wanted to say that I feel as though there are kind of roughly three. We have a ton of comments to get to. I don't want people to think that we're ignoring them. So please bear with us. And Ranger Gregory, thank you for putting us up. And Pool Not Dead and Andy Gatt, thanks for all the shares. We're gonna get to you in just a few. Thanks everybody. We have like 25 comments going through here. But I feel like it's all about a mindset, truly, because there are people who play better in tournaments. There are people who play better in league, and those are the people that go there more for the camaraderie and the fun. The people that play in tournaments have a different mindset, and the people that are action players have a different mindset. I've seen that as I mean, I'm not really a player. I've chosen this route, the behind the scenes route, as opposed to the player route for personal reasons. But I truly do believe that there are kind of, if you want to say, like, if you want to compartmentalize, those are the three types of players that I see. So I feel as though women really aren't action players these days. You see more and more coming
Well,
up.
that's where I was going.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's where
Yeah.
I was going. Now,
Um,
and let me qualify my conversation here. I'm basing my comments on when I came up, and we're talking about in the 70s and the 80s and into the 90s. Very different times. In those days, there really weren't a lot of big tournaments. You, like in my pool room, for example, I was always in action because there was action everywhere. Today,
Right.
there's really not a lot of action. The times have changed, but people came up. Oh, and also there weren't a lot of women playing pool back in those days either. And the women that did uh, compete were like JoAnn, taught by their fathers. Gloria Jean was taught to a certain extent by her father, Jean Belucas. In other words, they came up in pool rooms or had fathers that played, so on and so forth.
Right.
Almost all the women had male figures in their life that
That influenced their game.
that influenced their game, and they started young. I
Yes,
didn't hit a ball until I was 22 years old. And
that's
it
right.
was
That's why you're so unique, Mary.
right. And it was
That's
kind of
the-
an accident because I played all sports, and I played basketball, and I tore up my knees.
Oh.
And in those days, they didn't have the arthroscopic surgery like they have today. You know, it was like railroad tracks from thigh to shin, you know.
But
And
this is probably why you were able to pick pool up the way you did. It's kind of like learning a third language, right? So you
well,
play
yeah, I was
language of
searching
sport.
for something that I
Yeah.
could do that was competitive, because I
Right.
said, like I said, I grew up playing sports. I did
Yeah.
everything. And now all of a sudden I couldn't do any of it anymore. And it was like a void in my
Mhm.
life. And I tried bowling, boring, golf, boring, you know. And then I drove past a pool room and I thought, well, let me try that. And it was instant. I was captured. And the rest is history. But I didn't start until I was 22 years old, whereas most of the female players started when they were very young.
like 9, 12.
Or
Yeah,
younger.
They were even
There's a Jean
Yeah,
Belucas
5.
when
Yeah.
she was 4.
Me too.
Yeah. But anyway, let's get back to the difference between. So today, the difference in the game, the way I see it, is that, first of all, as JoAnn mentioned previously, the equipment is different. I remember when the Simonis cloth first came out in the late 80s,
Yeah.
It was so fast. I was afraid to swing my arm. I mean,
760.
yeah, 760. And then they
Yep.
finally came out
The
with
original.
860, which was a tad slower, but still, it took me several years to learn how to play on it and adjust to it.
Your
And
stroke.
also, right, I had such a big stroke. And
Right.
also, I lived in Vegas for 20 years, and Vegas is very dry. I'd be in dead stroke when I would come to the tournaments. And then I'd get to the tournaments, and the rails would be boinging and this and that. And it would take me, if I could last till the end of the tournament, I usually did well, if not win it. But most of the time, I just couldn't do it. And it was a big problem for me because I didn't roll the ball around the table like some of the other girls. And that was the big difference.
Mm-hmm.
I never rolled a ball. I don't know if you remember, Joe, but nobody ever rolled a ball back in those days because you'd run over. It was liable to make a U-turn on you. It hit a piece piece of felt, and you never rolled anything.
No. You had to stroke the ball.
Right. You had to hit it. You had to hit it. A medium pace.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Also, I want to get to some of the comments too. But the other thing is back, we're talking about back then, so it's then and now. So
right.
now
two
we
different
see a huge difference.
Stories. Yes.
Right. Huge difference. Significant. The timeline has now turned things around. We have a lot of people, like you said, playing. Jasmine Ocean was playing in opens. Christina Takash cashing in 4th out of 60, 70, 80 men. You have Kelly Fisher playing in opens, going hill with Mika, not once but twice. So this is becoming now that the times are changing and women aren't, and this is so horrible of me to say, but women aren't with baby all the time or standing behind the stove. I know I'm going to get some slack for this, but that's okay. The point is that JoAnn, you talked about this very openly, you and LJ. You guys in between matches were in the bathroom.
Well, yeah, I mean, Gloria Jean was. I played until I was 8 months pregnant.
Yep. And
I won 2 tournaments when I was pregnant.
Right. Well, this is what I'm saying. So and then we have different factors. So females have a lot of different genetic, a different makeup than men. We also, of course, think differently than men. So women are less aggressive, I believe, at the table than men are. I believe that men are just naturally more aggressive, hence being a man. And all these things, so it's like multi-factor.
Sure. And I'm going to tell you something that experienced it today. I was practicing today down in Edison at Sandcastle because there's a tournament, there are men's tournament,
Hi, Ed.
an open event. Just 2 women are entered. Myself and Jennifer Beretta are going to play this weekend. And I practiced with a really good player there, Al LaPena. And he was about to shoot a shot on a 6 with the 7 and the 6, 7, 8, 9 left on the table. And he asks me this question. He said, Mary, he says to me, he goes, how would you look to get on the 7? And I looked at the shot and I'm thinking, this is a shot that you could literally make 100 times in a row, as long as you don't look to do something stupid with it. He started doing all this crazy stuff I said, first of all, I wouldn't shoot this shot. I would 100% play safe. And I'm going to put you, meaning the cue ball, right there and stick you right on that back rail there and let you look at this ball with no position at all possible for the 7 and let you have at it. Because why should I go ahead and leave the table with a miss because I want to try to start doing stuff that you shouldn't even be trying to do? So they were arguing with me. I said, let's mark the table. So he marks the table. He wanted to mark the table. He marks the table. I said, go ahead. Let me see how it works out. Miss. I said, I don't want to miss. I don't want to miss. I don't want to miss a shot that I'm supposed to make all the time. So therefore, there's no good position on this shot. I'm not shooting it. To me, that's called intelligence. That's called not having a stupid ego. Excuse me, everybody, but Gloria said she wanted us to be straight, so I'm going to be straight about it. That's called knowing when, guess what? Not everybody's Jason Shaw. And when I leave him facing in the opposite direction, going away from the 7, and there's no good pocket for the 7, and he has to come with a God shot, now we're going to be in a safety battle. And guess what? I'm on equal footing with that. I might not be able to make that crazy, tough, insane stroke shot that he was looking to do on this slow table that they had there with the cloth, the bed of it being kind of slow. But I also know I'm going to eliminate mistakes because I play a lot smarter now than I ever did. And I know my game and I know what my capabilities are, and I'm going to play within those capabilities. And it's taken me a good distance so far.
And that's where I'm going. The male to female ratio. That's a really great example. And thank you so much for that, JoAnn. The male to female ratio in pool is now, it's still, like I said, it's still lopsided. The ratio is not even. But if you were to take, I mean, and there are pool players women pool players that are amazing that have never even come forth and played in a tournament or anything like that. And that's just, putting those aside. We're just beginning to hit now, like touch the tip of the iceberg with the females. I mean, granted, yes, Jean Belucas, even like Allison Fisher, like these women really, Mary, like these are the trailblazers that I'm talking about. And that's why I like I would love to have some more people, some younger women come on here, like Christina Tkach, which she was on, to talk about what it's like in the here and now. But in comparison, we've come a long way. For crying out loud, we didn't even have the okay to vote without a man's voice. We didn't have our own voice for that. But with that set aside, and just talking strictly about pool, because this isn't The View, and talking strictly about pool, Mary even said, I don't want you here. People tell her, I don't want you here. So she would go where she felt welcome.
I experienced that also, Mary. I experienced that. So we could just talk about that for a second. I had 2 different experiences as a woman. One was in Rome, Italy. I was traveling with my husband. This is back in the, I guess it was already late 80s. I had already won the Masters. And so I go, and Robert, my husband, he went and he had to go on a business meeting. And I said, I'll go and I'll practice. I'll find a pool room. I went and I asked the concierge at the hotel, and he directed me somewhere. I got in a cab and I went there. I got there, and because I was a woman, they said, I'm sorry, but no dice. You can't play here. Can't play there. In the late 80s. How about that? I was a top woman player in the country, and they said, no, not allowed. Not allowed because you have breasts. Not good. No. Get out. Then it happened again in 1991, I think, in Roanoke, Virginia. There were 3 tables available, and I said, I'd like to get a table, please. You'll be waiting a long time, I was told. I said, why is that? You'll be waiting a long time. Sorry, table's not available for you. There were no women playing. So think about that. That's not that long.
I'm not surprised.
So not only is the ratio because of women not being able to play because of families and men having more opportunity, but now women are being told you can't play here. And so I'm just gonna say this before I'm gonna get to some of the comments. I want the viewers to know that they're that
I'd like to just interject something before you do that. When I was talking before about what it was like back in those days, those were the days of women's lib. And so women were jumping into a lot of fields, and pool was just one of them. And it was a very male dominated thing. And it was a very insular sport. the only way that you learned was if somebody would show you things, or in my case, I just watched, and
Right.
then practiced on my own. And then I was lucky later on, I had some top men players to work with me. The difference between then and when I said about the action, all of that applied. Today, it's different. First of all, women do not face, at least in this country, do not face the same blockages that we did. Everywhere you look, there are women playing. The second thing is the internet. There is so much information now on the internet.
Unbelievable, right?
Right. If I would have had that back in those days,
Oh,
it would have been my own fault if I didn't become a great player.
right.
And also the level of instruction, the coaching, and so on and so forth. All of those things combined is the reason that the numbers of women, the internet, the instruction, the coaching, that is all the reasons why we are seeing women play well. Years ago, people would say to me, "Do you ever think a woman would be able to play as good as a man?" And I'd say no. And they'd be surprised. And they said, "Well, why?" And I said, "Because there's not enough of us yet. And there's too many things that are standing in our way."
Amen to
Right.
that.
I says, "I don't think I'll see it in my lifetime. But you know what? I'm going to be 68. Jesus, 68 this summer."
Happy birthday.
And thanks. Anyway, my point is that I think I just might see it.
Yes, you will.
Saming Chen, a couple
There
of
we
years
go.
ago, boy, I'll tell you what, she's knocking on the door. I mean, there's a lady that is breaking and running out 10-ball racks. And Kelly Fisher is doing real well, and Allison Fisher, and like you say, Jasmine, and all the rest of these girls, and Christina,
Young
young.
girls.
I mean, Christina, I don't know, was she 18, 19, 20? But anyway, my point is that there are so many now, and they're getting the instruction. They don't need the action. The action was to forge your game under fire and to play and learn from people. They don't have to do that anymore, because the male players are willing to show each other things, and there's instruction, there's internet, there's coaching, and so on and so forth. And so I do believe that there will be a day when a woman can win a major event against the Federgorsts and the
Amen to that.
Joshua Fillers and the Shane Van Bonings and so on and so forth.
Excuse me for 1 minute. Jim Monday just said, "Well, got to go. I will save this video so I can go back and see if you actually respond to comments like you keep saying you will. Men have no problem with women playing. I just like to give them spots just because they are a woman and getting beat." So should we go to the comments at this point?
Sure, why not? Is that
Time.
Jim Adame, Adame?
What is that?
That was Jim Adame, Adame?
No, Jim Monday, like that.
Oh,
like
I'm
the
sorry.
day of the
Okay.
week.
So say, because
No,
I know
that's
Jim.
okay.
Okay.
So I'm gonna try to get through. There's a bunch. So back hello from all of us, of course, to Andy Gow, and then Randy Bragdon. He put it on public from Pools Not Dead. Thank you very much. Randy Bragdon, men are better. Thank you for that complete sentence. It's who puts in the time. Yes, that is actually same gentleman. What? I'm just thanking him. Same gentleman. It's who puts in the time. Well, that is definitely a part of it. Obviously. And thank you for clarifying that, because we were just talking about the fact that men do have more time, or back then men had more time, and that's why women are upcoming now. Thank you, Andy, for sharing to the groups. Carly McGee, love you. Know that. Mwah. Hello to all. If anybody knows who Carly is, she is an avid watcher of all women's pool, all WPBA, everything. Ranger Gregory was the gentleman that I want to get to. He just put it in Pools Not Dead, approved it. Hi, Gloria. Hi, JoAnn. Andy, Mary. That's from Christopher Brockmeyer. Lots of real good young ladies playing great. Yes, Randy, absolutely. Okay, so ex-Tina, or I guess Christina, Lames Fina. I don't know who she is, but she wrote, and this is in the first 3 minutes. It definitely has to do with that. I have lots of arguments with my wife. Oh, it's a man. The same sex. I'm sorry. With my wife, same-sex relationships. It's unfair that my wife expects me to stay home and more and raise the kids than a man would be expected, leaving less time to practice for and play better. So, regardless of marriage, gender, same-sex marriage or relationships, one is a pool player and one is not. So there's an expectation that one stays home. And that's
I will
something I'd
say
like to touch on. Yeah, go ahead.
I did that. I retired when I had my son.
Right.
Because it was my husband had a business at the time. And if anyone was going to stay home with the baby, I was elected. That was it. And he never said to me, you should quit. But I myself did not want my child to be raised by a nanny. And I didn't want to schlep him around the country or around the world when he was that little. So I quit at the height of my career. I quit when I was 27 years old. So Mary, you just were getting going.
I quit several times.
Right. Well,
I quit to open my pool room for a
right.
year and a half, and then
Yeah.
came back after a year and a half and won 2 in a row. And yeah,
Mary.
and then I quit again when I had my child.
Right.
And well, let's put it this way: I didn't quit. What I really quit was I didn't quit the WPBA events, the major events, but I quit all the smaller events, the regional events.
Right.
And then of course, I had a health problem in '95, and that kind of put me on the sidelines permanently.
Mhm.
But my point is that as long as women do not have children, they have the time to hone their games. But as soon as they have children, they are expected, and most want, to stay home with their child.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's just the way it is.
Right. And there are some people like myself where I had to stop playing. I started at 16. I had to stop playing when I just started to become semi-okay to take care of my ill mother while my father worked.
That's another thing,
Because
right?
yeah. And the list goes on, because the female is almost expected
The
to do
women,
these things.
the woman is the caretaker, generally.
Right. I still
Generally.
take care of my father at 92 years old.
Right.
But I run this. I have a question here. Women can play, and I'm going to answer this question first to Jim Monday, the same gentleman who said what he said later. I don't want this to be argumentative, but I don't appreciate snide, snacky comments. We're kind of here to have a discussion. We're not children. Women can play in men events, but men can't play in women's events. What's up with that? So I'm just going to answer this first.
Give me a break.
I'm going to answer this first because I've been a tour director for 15 years. I started this tour, not Women in Pool, but the I Want Simonis tour 15 years ago with Races to 2. That's up to the tour director, the person who owns the tour, who runs the tour. That's the reason why. If you're talking about the WPBA, I would say send a message to them and ask them what's up with that. I can just tell you
It's called the Women's Professional Billiard Association.
Right. And if the men want to have one, kudos.
Yeah, have at it.
But that's
they've had a bunch of organizations. They can't keep their egos out of the game.
Right. And the women made the WPBA and Laura John has touched base on this, because they don't want anybody just going in and playing in a $25 tournament and going in and taking, all the cashola from the C players or the 320 Fargos or whatever it may be. So what they did was they put stipulations and regulations to say, hey, you're of this caliber, you don't need to do this. This is where you should be. So that's my perspective. Those are my words, and that's it. So if anybody else wants to jump in before I go to the next one, please feel free. No. Okay. What's up with Buddy Hall doing better? Pneumonia is a killer. Okay. Most men, so Andy Gal. So Andy Gal's a great guy. Andy, by the way, much respect to you. We were supposed to be commentating in a women's event this past weekend. Most men are taller and stronger, giving them an advantage in power breaks and having to use a bridge, but strictly talking skill, there is no advantage of men versus women. Like I said, I think this is really.
And even let me interrupt here. Even today, you don't need to power the break anymore.
That's where you're playing, Mary.
In my house.
Okay.
But with the template racks, which is what they're using most of the time now, just a medium firm stroke, park the cue ball, and and it's just you don't need to smash them anymore.
If you're playing,
it's more controlled now.
Yeah, definitely. I have a whole other thing. We should talk about that whole thing about these template racks, but we're not going to get.
We're going to have part 2 of this also, because we can't finish. There's no way we can finish this all in one sitting. It's like a Thanksgiving, meal. You have leftovers. But JoAnn, did you want to say something, please? I don't want to be rude.
No, that's okay. I think in the pro tour, on the pro tour, like in the couple of tournaments I've just recently played in, I agree with Mary, and that you don't need to hit the balls so hard because of the cloth and because of using a template rack. But at the last tournament, we did not use a template rack, and there were wooden racks, and the break was different. It was more like the old days. And if you're having that 3-point rule where the balls have to come in the back, then it is a little bit different. But
I think that's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is ridiculous.
But that was a WPBA event, right? So that was women versus women anyways.
Yeah. Expo at the Super Billiards Expo. And that's a different situation. But then again, overall, I think that the basic strength factor is really just not there anymore, as far as because of the equipment.
Yeah, you got live rails, you got fast cloth.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
So Randy also says you can compensate nowadays. Then Jim comes back in. Mainly on the break is the big difference. So there seems to be a lot of break seems to be the biggest thing.
Well, the top women, women generally, I'll agree with them there. They don't have the strength, but the top women, most of them break well. So,
I agree.
So when you're talking about women, you can't group every woman that plays pool on the same level. The elite women of the sport have no problem with the break.
Oh, headline here before we go any further, and I'll agree with that. Actually, I'll have to agree with Mary that I think that a break is something you should be practicing just as much as you should a shot.
Yeah, it's a shot. Yeah, it's a shot.
Yeah, I mean any shot. Upstate Al says 2 icons right there. Then he says 3 icons. I didn't see Mary. Al, that's very,
Hi, Al.
very, very sweet of you. I've known Al for a long time. I love you, Al. I consider no matter what sex, pool matters. Yeah, agreed. Girl power. I believe women can be just as good as any man. It's just up to them and how much time they can put in. It's up to what they can do. Hello, back to you. So Ranger Gregory, I think this is a gentleman I spoke of to you earlier. I think also the social limiters are also less now. Women are still more likely to get bothered in a bar, but in a legit pool room, they are more welcome. So
I
on
agree.
the nurture side, women aren't hit with the gatekeepers as much. And
I
this is the
agree.
gentleman that I told you about that I said really had thought out. He put up some statistics, and that's the reason. He's a modifier in Pool is Not Dead. If you're not in Pool is Not Dead, or Let's Talk About Pool, those are two phenomenal groups. I just wanted to throw that out there. Two phenomenal groups I personally love, with a lot. I'm talking thousands and thousands of people in there. So hey, back at you, Jerome. How are you? Carlos, good work, ladies. Uh, yeah, little girls wasn't in there. I'm sorry, Randy, because we've passed. That's my apologies there. I don't know what that refers to. And Sue, the yep, I don't know. Hello, Mary Kenniston. David Temecki, a friend of mine, David Temecki. Hello, Mary Kenniston.
Excuse me, going back to little girls. That's another thing that I did mention before.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
Women, little girls generally don't play sports.
Oh, I see what okay, I see what he's saying.
They
Yep.
just don't play sports like little boys do. You know, in my
Right.
neighborhood, I was the only girl that played with the guys.
So was
You know?
I.
Yeah.
Me too.
And, you know, in the old days, they used to call them tomboys. I don't know what they call them
Yes,
today,
That's
but
what
I
they
was a
call it right
tomboy.
now. Yeah, you got
And
that right.
yeah, and but and as far as the women's teams, I didn't play on an organized team until I got to junior high. Today they call it middle school. For me, it was seventh grade. In elementary school, they didn't have any girls' teams, and in every sport, it was always the same girls. You know, there was, you know, I don't know, dozen of us. And when we started playing in the pool, when we got into the pool world, it was the always same dozen girls that showed up. In fact, there was 11 of us that showed up at every tournament.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, it would be really
Mary,
In
let
the
me
80s,
ask-
a few regional players, you know, that
Can I
jumped in.
Mary, a question?
So,
I just
yes,
want to
go
ask
ahead.
you this question real fast, Mary. When you first started playing sports as a young woman, a young girl, why did you start to begin with? What was your motivation? Why did you do it?
now I have to interview Mary.
Yeah, you totally have to interview Mary. I can't believe you haven't had Mary on
Mary,
your
do
show.
you agree to an interview?
Sure.
All right.
Well, I remember I was 4. When I was 4, it was Christmas. I had my family, I was the oldest. My sister was 2 years younger than me, and then my brother was an infant. So we were 4, 2, and my brother was an infant.
Okay.
Christmas. And my mother got my sister and I both dolls.
Uh-huh.
That was for Christmas.
Right.
And I looked at Mom and said, I'm going to give this to Kathy. And she looks at me and she says, you don't want a doll? I said, no. She says, well, what do you want? I said, I want a bike.
Mm.
So anyway, I couldn't get a bike right away because, you know, we didn't have any money in those days. And anyway, my father brought home an old bike and fixed it up for me. And it was beautiful, you know, and so that was my bike because I saw the boys riding them. I didn't see any little girls riding bikes, but I didn't even know that it was not a girl thing. I just wanted to ride the bike. And then they were playing baseball and football. And that's the only sport I didn't play. And by the way, I was the best player in the neighborhood.
Of course you were.
I was always taller than the rest of them. And, you know, guys don't sprout up as quickly as girls. Huh?
Did the boys like you or not like you because of that?
Oh, they all wanted to be on my team because I was the best player. And then the second best player in the neighborhood, we couldn't be on the same teams because we were the best. And then the next time it became apparent to me is that all the little boys in my neighborhood and the neighborhood around started to play Little League. Well, I wanted to play Little League.
Did you get to?
No. No. You know why?
Why?
Because I didn't have a penis.
There you go. You weren't a boy.
That's right. And the coach of the town little league team went to bat for me. He went and tried to get me on the team because he knew I was the best player, and he failed.
See?
And but that was in the 60s. It just so I was born a little bit too soon. I
Yeah,
was
you
born
were
a
ahead
little
of
bit too
your
soon.
time.
I was kind of ahead of my
Like I
time.
said, trailblazers. That's what we
Yeah,
have here.
yeah, but
Trailblazers. I mean,
it wasn't a conscious decision on my part that I wanted to play sports. It's just that it was
yes,
just what I did.
Yeah.
exactly.
I didn't
And
want
I
to play
can
with dolls and play house and
Right.
I
dress
can
up.
relate to that
Yeah.
because as a child, my mother gave me a doll and she said I just looked at it and I threw it out the playpen. But she would give me something like a watch and I'd like dissect the thing because I wanted to know how things worked. I was always like really analytical. Um, and then as I grew up, I was an avid tennis player, third in Staten Island, New York. I
Very-
played
See, I knew you were a
pitcher,
city girl. I could tell.
catcher, yeah,
Yeah.
pitcher, catcher, shortstop, right field. Um, I
Nice.
played point, basketball, like I said, gymnast, huge gymnast. I could
I hated
throw,
that.
oh, I loved, are you kidding me?
I hated
Sprints.
that. The only
Yes,
thing I liked,
All for it.
the only thing I liked was high jumping and they made me do broad jump and I had to run hurdles because I was the only one that could get over them because I was tall. I had long legs.
I was good with the dashes, even though I'm tiny. I was
And I like
just
the
really, really
horse. I
quick.
like the horse.
Yeah, I was, oh my gosh, I miss it. But I used to get picked before the boys for kickball.
Yeah. Well, I was
I used
always
to get
picked. I was always the
picked
first
before,
one
and,
picked.
but
For
like I said,
dodgeball. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm tiny.
the
I'm a
second
tiny thing.
Yeah.
I was always second picked in because I grew up in New York City and I was always second picked and we would go downstairs and I'd go down there and play with all the boys, all these different games. And there would always be two boys that would be the captains.
Yeah, I was
Because
one of the
never
captains.
I was never allowed to be a captain, Mary. They didn't allow it. But I would always.
They had no choice for me because I was better than all of them.
All right. Okay. I just want to get to a couple more of these, but hello, Mary. Broke down many doors in the pool world. Amen to that. Amen to that. Randy,
Thank
you
you.
need something on the line for pressure training. So I think he's talking about gambling. Back to Jim again. Yes, it does. Gambling helps the pressure. Yes, it really does, because if you're gonna fold under anything, it's like you want something there to teach you a lesson.
Yeah,
but, you
that's
can get that
well
lead.
well put. I didn't explain that well, but yeah, because when you play a short match, and when I say a short, they say, "Oh, well, a race to 9, that's not a short match." Yeah, it is. It's hard to feel the same kind of pressure that you feel when your money's on the line. I mean, it's
we have an action match scheduled tomorrow night between two teams on the I Want Simonis page. So let's see what happens there. I don't like playing tournaments, but I'm a long-term player too, Randy. Okay, Carly McGee, WPBA have come out on top this year with number of competitions throughout the year. Hats off to them. As for the rest of the top promoters, there are not enough tournaments geared toward the women. Amen. It is still very male dominated, and there is no reason why they can't hold ladies events in the same competitions. Well, that has to do with the WPBA guidelines, but I can tell you right now that I am putting together a women in pool tournament with a minimum $2,500 added. Okay, I'm putting that together. I'm doing all the legwork behind the scenes. That's going to be live streamed. We're going to have a referee, the whole 9 yards. And like I said, this is just growing. I'm going to make sure that this grows really big. JoAnn knows how passionate I am about this. With that being said, I'm going to run a stream of women in pool events, but some really big ones to kick it off and show people that women can play pool. And that gentleman that said, why are there women events and not male events? Because of the tournament directors and the people who run them. So no, males will not be welcome to this event, not because we don't like you, but because this is women in pool.
That's
uh,
kind of, that's almost a silly question anyway, because, why do they have two basketball leagues? I mean, it's just, it's,
yeah,
not
I feel
even,
like we're always
it's
picked
not even
on.
a valid question.
We're always
I
picked
feel
on.
like
Oh,
we're running late, Gloria. Do you see the time already?
yes, yes. That's why I'm trying to get through these. I did pin at the bottom something about Mary back in 2020. So if you want to go back down to the very bottom of this, click on that video and you'll know a little bit more about Mary if you don't know who Mary is. You've been hiding under a rock. You have less to lose in tournaments, so there is less pressure than when gambling. Yes, gambling in tournaments is negative. Okay. Let's not
It's
forget
a different
Vivian.
kind of pressure.
Definitely,
Yes,
totally different.
exactly. Exactly. Let's not forget Vivian. She was outstanding against the men. Yes, Vivian, actually, Vivian Guest, very good player. Look at Savannah Easton. I sponsor Savannah, actually. She reminds me of the Jean Belucas and the women back then. She's a complete tomboy. She plays all different sports, hockey, everything. Savannah is, to me, Savannah is going to be one of the top women. Give her a few years. Like a few ladies. Another reason, all right, here's a good point. Another reason why women historically haven't been action players, other than social biases, is the extra. Um, he's talking about basically the testosterone and whatnot of the male, which has been scientifically shown to make men more competitive. So maybe this is why men need to gamble and attach ego to winning. On a global scale, men's levels of these hormones is lower year he means year by year. Likewise, a study about women's behaviors in relations areas, aggression and competition is trending. To quote the psych paper, no man like, that's in quotes. So there might be chemical reasons. The gap is narrowing. And then Christina says 100%. Women definitely have more patience. I don't know
Well,
about that. That
it,
depends.
well, I kind of agree with him that women are less aggressive and less competitive and so on and so forth as a group.
I agree with that.
Even,
You're right.
with the Title IX that, came out, I don't know, a long time ago, 30 something years ago, which forced colleges to uh, uh, support women's sports the same way they supported men's sports. The percentage of women that play sports is still so much smaller as a group
Right.
than men are as a group. It's just different because women generally are just different.
For sure. And you know what?
They're
Today,
not competitive. They're not. I'm talking as a
The
group.
general. Yeah,
Yeah, the general. They're just different.
right.
They don't play sports.
Yeah, if you look at it from just a male female, like men are from Mars, women
Women are
from
from yeah,
whatever that book
yeah.
is.
I remember that book.
If you look
I
at
think
that, they do think differently. So they're going to think differently at the table. They're going to think there is a difference in it. My watch is telling me to get off my lazy bum. There is a difference in us scientifically, hormonally, overall, the way that also, the way that we were brought up, and that's why
Right,
this
societal
generation is
pressures. Yeah.
societal. Exactly. This generation is so different. I think if that's okay with everybody, we've been on for a little while. I think we should probably close out and do a part two. You in for a part two, JoAnn? I know you're always up for a part two.
yeah, it
Um,
depends when we'll see. We'll coordinate the date
I
because I'm going to be
have I have the 12th with let me just check it this right here. Hold on 1 second. Women in Pool 2 o'clock with Kelly. So I made one at 2 o'clock with Kelly. I was hoping that this could be a part two, and Kelly Fisher could give us her thoughts on it. I'm going to ask Allie, and Ava said she cannot. She has APA again, which really stinks. But June 12th, if anybody can make it, I would love to make this part two. of it, because I don't think that we really got into the whys. We kind of talked like more. I really want to answer the questions. There's a whole feed of questions that haven't been answered. And Upstate Al,
We'll
thank
get
you
to it.
again.
We'll get to it.
Um,
Mary, thank you so much for doing this and
You're
coming
welcome,
up
Joe. Thank you.
Yes, yes.
so much.
Mary, do you think that you would be interested in part 2 on June 12th? I can send you a private message for the interview as well.
Well, it's really hard for me to commit far ahead.
Ask her
So
to-
just give me a heads up a day or two in advance and I'll let you know.
Okay, that sounds good. That sounds good.
Generally, it would be a yes, but
And I am actually going to say goodnight because I have my family waiting for me for dinner.
Okay, all right. We
Right.
are gonna go to, I have to take care of Pops and a couple of other things and feed my cats before they bite my leg. So they have
So
to
good to
be
see you.
out.
me, I'm just hungry.
I want my Pringles. I'm not gonna lie, JoAnn.
I
You
know
know me,
you love
right? I have to get my Pringles. All
I
right.
do.
Good night, everybody. I'm sorry if we didn't get to your questions. We'll be getting to them, or try to get to them, or please reiterate them. We do apologize. We veer a little bit. You know, we are women. So
Yeah,
we
well,
will,
don't think men don't fear a little bit either.
That's right, Mary.
Yeah.
I think that was a little bit facetious of me.
Okay, good. Well, I just don't want your viewers to get the wrong idea.
No, that's hence that. So everybody, you have a wonderful night. There are some people that are going to be commenting because they're tagging other people, and people that I know and people that I may or may not get along with, and this is going to be a little controversial, and it is what it is. So everybody have a wonderful night. Enjoy your dinner, whatever it may be, my dear. And Mary, we'll chat soon. And everybody, have a wonderful one. And we'll see you hopefully June 12th at in the afternoon. And we'll be putting something up about that. And Mary, thank you again for joining.
You're welcome. Thank you.
JoAnn. Okay.
Night.
Good night, everyone.
Bye, everybody.